Welcome to Tell Me More Stories Told Is podcast.
Great to be diving into another story.
And what a story we have today. We're heading back to Stockholm, Sweden, August 1973.
Ah, yes. The Norrmalmstorg robbery.
Exactly. Now, you might think, okay, a bank robbery, we've heard those stories.
But this one is different. It's not just about the crime itself, which was dramatic enough. It's about what happened inside that bank vault.
It really is. It's a story that honestly gave birth to a psychological phenomenon that people still talk about constantly.
Stockholm Syndrome. This is where it all began.
So our mission today is to unpack those 6 days in August. What happened? Who were the key players? And how did this bizarre situation unfold?
We want to get into the nitty-gritty, the human dynamics, the fear, the unexpected connections.
Okay, let's set the scene. It's August 23rd, 1973, Norrmalmstorg Square, Stockholm.
Pretty central, busy area.
And Jan-Erik Olsson walks into Kreditbanken. Now, this guy wasn't just some random desperate person. He was actually a known criminal out on furlough.
Right, already a bit of a red flag there. He attempts to rob the bank, but things escalate very, very quickly.
Police are on the scene fast, there's gunfire, an officer gets injured.
And then almost immediately, you get this really weird moment. Olsson orders another officer to sing.
To sing a song. I mean, talk about setting a strange tone right from the start. What was it, Lonesome Cowboy or something?
Something like that, yes. It was just odd. A signal that this wasn't following any standard playbook.
Definitely not. So Olsson takes 4 hostages, bank employees, Brigitte Lundblad, Elizabeth Oldgren, Kristen Enmark, and Sven Safström.
And his demands are pretty specific. He wants 3 million Swedish kroner, which was a huge amount then.
Plus 2 guns, bulletproof vests, helmets.
And a fast car.
Yeah.
Specifically, a Ford Mustang.
He'd clearly given this some thought. But the biggest demand, maybe?
Getting his friend Clark Olofsson brought to the bank. Olofsson was a notorious, quite charismatic criminal himself, serving time elsewhere.
Now, initially there was some confusion, right? The police thought Olsson might be someone else.
Yeah, another escaped prisoner known for robberies. It just shows the initial chaos, the fog of the situation.
But they figure out it's Olsson, and he wants Olofsson. And here's where the authorities make a really surprising call.
They agree. They actually bring Clark Olofsson from prison to the bank.
What was the thinking there? It seems incredibly risky.
Well, the rationale apparently was that Olofsson was such a well-known criminal, he probably wouldn't want to get entangled in Olsson's messy situation. They hoped he might act as a negotiator, maybe calm Olsson down.
A big gamble.
A huge gamble, and it immediately changed the dynamic inside the bank.
And this is where we start to see things get psychologically complex. Because one of the hostages, Kristen Enmark, she later said something quite startling.
She did. She stated that she actually felt safer with the robbers, Olsson and Olofsson, than she did with the police outside.
Safer with the captors. How does that even compute?
Well, her fear was about the police response. She worried that if the police stormed the bank, it would lead to violence and the hostages would be caught in the crossfire. It's this emerging sense that her immediate survival depended on keeping the captors calm.
That's, wow, a very early sign of things shifting.
Definitely. So Olsson and now Olsson, they barricade themselves, and the 4 hostages inside the main bank vault, a reinforced, secure space.
Negotiations continue. They reach some kind of agreement about a getaway car being provided.
But crucially, the police refused to let them take the hostages with them. That was a sticking point.
Tensions must have been sky high.
Off the charts. And then Olsson does something to really escalate things. He calls the Prime Minister Olof Palme.
Directly.
And he threatens to kill one of the hostages if his demands aren't met.
Just a threat, or?
No, he made it real. He apparently put one of the hostages, Kristen Enmark actually, in a stranglehold while on the phone so her screams could be heard. Then he hung up.
Chilling. Just absolutely chilling. Imagine being on the other end of that call.
Or being Kristen Enmark. But then, the very next day, something even more bizarre happens.
If that's possible.
Kristen Enmark calls Prime Minister Palme herself.
Okay, you'd expect her to be pleading for rescue, right?
Yeah.
Begging him to give in.
That's what you'd expect. But no, she apparently told Palme she was very displeased with his attitude, that she fully trusted Olsson and Olofsson, and she asked the Prime Minister to let the robbers take her and the other hostages and leave in the getaway car.
She has to leave with them.
Yes. She was essentially advocating for her captors plan, arguing it was the safest option for the hostages.
This is the core of it, isn't it? This complete inversion of what you'd expect.
It's the moment that really baffled everyone. The lines weren't just blurred, they seemed to be redrawn entirely.
And inside this pressure cooker, this vault, life sort of went on in this strange bubble.
Incredibly strange. There's this detail about Clark Olofsson just walking around the vault singing.
Seeing what?
Roberta Flack's Killing Me Softly.
You're kidding. In the middle of a hostage crisis.
Apparently so. It just paints such a surreal picture of the atmosphere inside, the tension, the fear, but also these moments of almost mundane weirdness.
It's hard to wrap your head around. Okay, so days are passing. August 23rd, 24th, 25th. What were the police doing?
They were trying to figure out a way in, obviously. On the 26th, they managed to drill a hole into the vault.
Where from?
From the apartment directly above the bank vault.
Okay, tactical move.
And through that hole, they managed to take photographs. One of them became incredibly famous. It shows the hostages looking relatively calm with Clark Olofsson.
Capturing that strange closeness we've been talking about.
Exactly. But Olsson wasn't happy about this hole, obviously.
I imagine not.
He reacted violently, fired his gun up into the drill hole, and actually wounded a police officer in the hand or arm.
So still incredibly dangerous. Any sense of calm was fragile.
Very fragile. A constant reminder of who was ultimately in control inside that vault.
Now, if you're finding this story as gripping as we do, this might be a good moment to hit that subscribe button. We dive into fascinating stories like this all the time on Tell Me More, and you won't want to miss what's coming up.
Absolutely. So the standoff continues. Olsson had threatened he'd kill the hostages if the police tried a gas attack.
But the police were running out of options.
Pretty much. So on August 28th, day 6, they decided to deploy tear gas through that drill hole.
Despite the threats?
Despite the threats, it was a calculated risk. They pumped gas into the vault.
And what happened?
Well, after about an hour, maybe a bit less, Olsson and Olofsson surrendered. They came out.
Then the hostages.
Hostages came out too. And the truly remarkable thing, despite everything, the gunfire, the threats, the 6 days in that vault, the tear gas, none of them had any permanent physical injuries.
That is incredible. Huge relief, obviously.
A testament, perhaps, to something in the dynamic that prevented the worst outcome, despite the danger.
But the story doesn't end with the surrender. The aftermath is almost as fascinating as the siege itself.
It really is. Both Olsson and Olofsson were tried and convicted initially.
But Olofsson's conviction.
It was later overturned on appeal. The court found he hadn't really been a willing participant in the same way as Olsson, arguing he was brought there by the police and was partly trying to protect the hostages. He ended up receiving only the remainder of a previous sentence.
Interesting legal distinction. But what about the hostages' relationships afterwards?
This is where it gets truly mind-blowing. Kristen Enmark, the hostage who called the prime minister, she reportedly met with Clark Olofsson several times after he was released.
Met with him. Voluntarily.
Yes, and apparently their families became friendly.
Friendly. With the man who held her hostage.
Believe it or not, it speaks volumes about the complexity of the bond that formed under duress. It wasn't simple fear or hatred.
That's astonishing. What about Olsson?
Olsson served his time. While inside, he apparently received loads of letters, many from women admiring him.
Seriously. Fan mail.
Yes. And he eventually got engaged while in prison, though, contrary to some popular myths, not to Kristen Enmark or any of the other hostages.
Okay, good to clear that up. Did he stay out of trouble after prison?
Not entirely. He had some further brushes with the law later on. Eventually, he moved to Thailand with his wife and son for many years, running a supermarket, before returning to Sweden.
And he even wrote a book, didn't he?
He did. An autobiography titled, appropriately enough, Stockholm Syndrome.
Wow. So this whole bizarre situation, the hostages' reactions, their sympathy, this needed a name, didn't it?
It did. And criminologist and psychiatrist Nils Bejerot, who was advising the police during the siege, he studied it closely. He coined the term Norrmalmstorg syndrome.
Which translates basically to Norrmalmstorg syndrome.
Exactly, which the world came to know as Stockholm Syndrome.
And how did he define it, essentially?
It's that psychological response where hostages or victims of abuse develop positive feelings, empathy, sympathy, loyalty towards their captors or abusers. Sometimes they even develop negative feelings towards authorities or anyone trying to help them.
Like Kristen Enmark distrusting the police and trusting Olsson.
Precisely. What was so striking here was that it wasn't just one hostage, it seemed to be a shared dynamic. And crucially, the hostages didn't turn against each other or against the police in any violent way, even when Olsson threatened them if they didn't cooperate. They formed a kind of unit with the captors against the outside threat.
It really does challenge everything you think you know about survival and fear.
Absolutely. It highlights the brain's incredible, sometimes counterintuitive ways of coping with extreme stress and powerlessness.
And this story, understandably, has captured the public imagination ever since. It's been told and retold.
Oh, definitely. There was a Swedish TV movie called Norrmalmstorg. More recently, the Canadian film Stockholm, starring Ethan Hawke.
I think I saw that one.
There was also a great episode of the podcast Criminal that actually featured an interview with Clark Olofsson himself.
Wow, hearing his perspective must have been something.
And of course, the Netflix series Clark, focusing on Olofsson's life. It shows just how enduring the fascination with this event is.
At the heart of it all, though, is that central paradox. The hostages actively voicing support for their captors, showing distrust towards the authorities trying to rescue them.
That was the spark. That unprecedented behavior demanded explanation, and it led to the whole field of study around Stockholm Syndrome.
So when we boil it all down, what's the lasting significance of the Norrmalmstorg robbery?
Or it's so much more than just a gripping crime narrative. It's a profound window into human psychology under extreme pressure.
That bond, the one that seems so illogical from the outside.
Exactly. It challenged fundamental assumptions about fear, survival, empathy, and how humans react in captivity. The term Stockholm Syndrome itself has become part of our everyday language, hasn't it?
Yeah, you hear it used all the time, sometimes maybe too casually.
Perhaps. But its origins lie in this incredibly intense real-life drama. And it helps us discuss complex dynamics not just in hostage situations, but in abusive relationships, cults, other situations of control and manipulation.
It makes you question how fixed our ideas of good guys and bad guys or safety and danger really are when you're in the thick of a crisis.
Your immediate reality can completely reshape your perceptions and allegiances in ways that seem baffling from a safe distance.
The Norrmalmstorg story keeps resonating because it's about those gray areas, the surprising ways people connect and cope when survival is on the line.
Which leaves us with a thought to chew on. How much are our bonds and loyalties shaped not just by choice, but by the extreme circumstances we find ourselves in? Could a survival instinct actually push us towards connection, even with a perceived threat?
Something to definitely think about. The human mind is endlessly complex.
Indeed it is.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive on Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast. We hope it's given you plenty to consider about this incredible event.
Until next time, keep exploring those stories.
Keep questioning, keep learning. We'll catch you on the next one.